Wherever you're watching, welcome to AWA Updates, bringing you the latest breaking developments in U.S. politics and global affairs. And tonight we begin with two powerful stories shaking the political landscape. President Donald Trump is once again under scrutiny over his ever-shifting explanations regarding his connection to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell as bipartisan pressure builds for the full release of the so-called Epstein files. And at the same time, the U.S. Senate has confirmed Emil Bove to a lifetime federal judgeship despite explosive whistleblower allegations about his previous actions while serving at the Justice Department. Before we dive deeper, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a single critical update from AWA Updates, because the stories we are covering tonight will have lasting consequences for the administration, Congress, and victims seeking justice. President Trump has found himself unable to avoid the ongoing controversy swirling around Epstein and Maxwell, with his public comments drawing fresh scrutiny and political headaches. In recent days, Trump has struggled to articulate a consistent explanation for his past relationship with Epstein, the disgraced financier who was accused of running a vast sex trafficking network that victimized underage girls for years before his death in 2019. In newly surfaced remarks, Trump claimed that Epstein had stolen employees from him at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, including women who worked in the spa. When pressed by reporters on whether those employees included young women, Trump responded evasively at first, but ultimately acknowledged that yes, the individuals Epstein lured away from his staff included young women, an admission that has only intensified the focus on what the president knew about Epstein. Teens' activities during the years they were associated. One name in particular has loomed large in these discussions: Virginia Giuffre, a woman who became one of the leading public accusers of Epstein and Maxwell, and who tragically died by suicide this past April. Trump, in his comments, referenced Giuffre as one of the employees taken from Mar-a-Lago, saying Epstein stole her from his spa, but the context of those remarks has drawn fierce backlash. Giuffre's family issued a statement at the time of her death, saying that the toll of years of abuse was unbearable and that the trauma ultimately became too heavy for her to carry. Those close to Giuffre and advocates for Epstein's other victims have criticized Trump for what they see as a callous and self-serving recounting of events, one that focuses more on his business inconvenience than on the suffering of the women and girls exploited by Epstein and Maxwell. Adding to the complexity is the fact that Giuffre herself had previously testified in a 2016 deposition as part of a defamation case she filed against Ghislaine Maxwell, in which she described being approached by Maxwell while working at Mar-a-Lago and subsequently drawn into Epstein's orbit, where she was sexually abused and trafficked to powerful men. The president's casual invocation of her name and circumstances has sparked renewed calls for transparency about the extent of his interactions with Epstein, with critics arguing that he still has much more to explain. The White House has so far declined to provide detailed answers about the president's comments or the broader controversy, and Justice Department officials have refused to say whether they are considering any form of clemency for Maxwell, who is currently serving a lengthy prison sentence for her role in Epstein's trafficking network. Reports have surfaced that Todd Blanche, Trump's personal defense attorney, recently spent 9 hours in meetings with Maxwell, raising questions about what information Maxwell may have offered and whether a potential deal could be on the table. This development has only fueled speculation about whether Maxwell holds damaging information that could implicate others, including Trump himself, and whether she might attempt to leverage that information in exchange for leniency. The Justice Department's silence on the matter has done little to quell public suspicion, especially as a new Washington Post poll shows that an overwhelming majority of Americans across the political spectrum want the full release of the Epstein files, the trove of documents and evidence that could shed light on the scope of Epstein and Maxwell's activities and any prominent individuals who were connected to them. This issue has become one of the few truly bipartisan demands in an otherwise polarized political environment, with voters insisting on accountability and transparency regardless of party affiliation. In fact, as NBC's John Allen noted, polling on this issue is so lopsided that even ice cream is less popular than the idea of making the Epstein files public. On Capitol Hill, the controversy is creating deep divisions within the Republican Party, as House Speaker Mike Johnson has found himself increasingly unable to contain the growing rebellion among his members. Initially, Johnson attempted to brush aside the Maxwell and Epstein issue, hoping to avoid entangling the House GOP in a politically perilous matter that directly touches the president. But that strategy has backfired spectacularly. Several of Johnson's own members have revolted, refusing to pass unrelated legislation on the House floor until more action is taken to address the Epstein controversy. One member has even launched a discharge petition, a rarely used procedural maneuver designed to bypass leadership and force a vote that would compel the House to act on measures to release the Epstein files or further investigate Maxwell's connections. At the same time, the House Oversight Committee has taken the extraordinary step of subpoenaing Maxwell to testify before Congress, a move that underscores just how much pressure lawmakers are facing to respond. Maxwell's attorneys, however, have set a series of conditions for her appearance, including demands for congressional immunity, a delay of the testimony, and advance copies of all questions she would be asked. Committee leaders have flatly rejected the idea of granting immunity, arguing that Maxwell is not a credible witness and that any concessions would undermine their ability to get truthful answers. The stalemate has left lawmakers scrambling to find a way forward, as members of the far-right faction in particular insist that the committee must be seen as aggressively pursuing answers, both to satisfy their base and to fend off accusations of a cover-up. The delicate political balancing act has left Speaker Johnson in an untenable position as he faces competing demands from pro-Trump loyalists who want to shield the president and from rank-and-file members who fear that inaction will alienate voters. And with the president himself continuing to speak publicly about the matter, often in ways that provide new fodder for critics, the issue is not going away anytime soon. Meanwhile, the Senate's decision to confirm Emil Bove to the federal bench has added yet another layer of controversy to the broader questions about accountability and integrity in the justice system. Bove, who previously held senior roles in the Justice Department, was narrowly approved in a vote that saw only two Republicans, Murkowski and Collins, join Democrats in opposition. The confirmation came just hours after a whistleblower alleged that Bove had misled lawmakers about his handling of the high-profile corruption case involving New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and had even suggested to colleagues that they should defy court orders blocking Trump's immigration agenda during his first term. These revelations have intensified concerns that the administration is elevating officials who have shown a willingness to circumvent legal norms in service of political objectives. Senate Democrats have vowed to continue investigating the whistleblower's claims, while Republicans who supported Bove's confirmation have largely dismissed the allegations as unsubstantiated. Still, the controversy underscores a broader pattern that critics say is emblematic of Trump's approach to governance, prioritizing loyalty over the rule of law and seeking to insulate himself and his allies from accountability at all costs. Back at the White House, press secretary briefings have grown increasingly tense as reporters press for answers about whether the president will order the Justice Department to release the Epstein files, a step that legal experts say he has the authority to take. Thus far, Trump has avoided making such a commitment, and aides privately admit they are worried about what those files might contain. As John Allen pointed out in his analysis, the simplest way for the president to put the controversy behind him would be to direct the DOJ to declassify and publish everything it has related to Epstein and Maxwell, with appropriate redactions to protect victims' identities. Yet Trump has so far resisted that course of action, fueling speculation that he is concerned about potential fallout. Vaughn Hilliard, NBC's White House correspondent, has noted that Trump's personal discomfort with the topic is palpable, and that his repeated attempts to change the subject have only drawn more attention to the matter. The president's critics argue that his behavior suggests there is more to the story than he is willing to admit, while his allies insist that he is the target of a politically motivated smear campaign. For Republicans on Capitol Hill, the political calculus is becoming increasingly fraught. They must contend not only with the demands of their base, which overwhelmingly supports the release of the Epstein files, but also with the broader American public, which sees the issue as a simple matter of justice and transparency. At the same time, they are wary of doing anything that could damage Trump politically or alienate him personally, a risk that could carry serious consequences for their own political futures. Speaker Johnson and his leadership team are walking a tightrope, trying to demonstrate that they are taking the matter seriously without crossing the president. But as Melanie Zanona of NBC News reported, the pressure is only growing, and Johnson's grip on his caucus appears to be weakening by the day. Internal divisions are spilling into public view, with committee chairs and rank-and-file members openly disagreeing about the best path forward. Some Republicans believe that bringing Maxwell in to testify would be a mistake, as it would give her a platform to further muddy the waters and possibly make unverified claims. Others argue that refusing to hear from her would look like a cover-up and would only deepen public suspicion. The debate has paralyzed the House at a time when it must also grapple with a host of other pressing issues, from funding the government to addressing international crises, and it remains unclear how or when the standoff will be resolved. As we close tonight, the central question remains: will President Trump take decisive action to resolve the controversy by releasing the Epstein files, or will the issue continue to fester, dragging down his administration and further eroding public trust? Advocates for Epstein's victims say the answer is obvious. The files must be made public, no matter the political cost, so that the full extent of the abuse can be documented and those responsible can be held accountable. But for a president who has built his brand on loyalty and secrecy, that may be easier said than done. What is certain is that the demand for transparency will not fade away, and neither will the memory of the countless victims whose lives were shattered by Epstein and Maxwell's crimes. The American people deserve answers, and the coming weeks will test whether their leaders are willing to provide them. See you in the next video.